It's not an opinion video. It's a developer journal. As you can see from the title, it doesn't say opinion. So I want to give you all an update. I've been working on Legends and Lore, the RPG that I announced that I was working on a little while back. It's been a couple of months. We've had a handful of playtest sessions. Let me tell you what I've learned. Now, this is not the first RPG that I have developed. It is, I think, the first one I'm going to finish. I have a lot of unfinished projects. Mounds of unfinished projects. This one's moving along at a nice little clip, though, and I have, unlike a lot of my previous projects, I have a very clear idea of what it should look like at the end. Now, here's what happened. I was modeling a few things, particularly teamwork abilities, such as giving assistance to somebody else or protecting somebody else from danger or damage. I was modeling these after Monster of the Week, which is a very early entry in the Powered by the Apocalypse family. The system is a Powered by the Apocalypse game, although several things have changed, such as the use of a D20 instead of 2D6. I call things by different names just because it's part of the trappings of D&D, which is what this is supposed to be. So like instead of attributes or stats, it's ability scores. Instead of playbooks, they're called classes. But these are not mechanical changes. They are just terminology changes. So I had started to fall into well, let me back up. I was modeling these things after Monster of the Week, where when you want to do one of those things, these teamwork abilities, you're going to make a roll, and based on the results of that roll, you either succeed or fail. You get various perks, etc., which is fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. It did run into a problem, though, where, like, somebody would make a roll against a monster, and then they almost got what they needed, so somebody else is going to help out. And so they do help out, but their roll means that they open up themselves to danger as well, and so the monster does some damage to them. So instead of them taking damage, somebody else is going to jump in and protect them. And so you have, like, all of these rolls all to resolve one little exchange. And that's not what I wanted. That's not how the game is supposed to be, because that was getting really bogged down. It was sort of, there was a bit of mental load that was required to sort of keep track of, like, all right, what was happening before this series of 4 or 5 different dice rolls and all these things going off. And then there was a question of, like, oh, can I do my thing where I'm going to go in and, the fighter particularly is going to go in and, like, hit somebody with a hammer and then also protect all of his allies continuously at no cost. Because the fighter is very good at mitigating damage, which is by design. I'm actually, by the way, super pleased with the way that, like, the durable classes, the fighter, the paladin. We only have a fighter right now, but I am anticipating that the paladin will work similarly. I'm very pleased with the way that, like, with how slowly damage accumulates on them. It does accumulate, but very slowly. So there was that question, and then there was also the question of, like, how do spells work? Because historically in D&D, spells are like a list of specific discrete abilities and effects that you learn. You pick them from a list. Well, that's kind of contrary to Powered by the Apocalypse style games, where you're going to have, like, a short list of special abilities that sort of enhance the way that you interact with the rules. But for the most part, your actions are narratively driven. So I had this idea of, like, it's kind of like an extra move layered on top of the basic moves. So whatever you roll for the basic move, if you are casting a spell, you can use your spell casting ability instead of whatever ability would normally be. And then you can spend, like, if you roll badly, you have to spend fatigue, or gain fatigue. And if you roll well, you get additional perks allowing you to enhance the effect of your move. And this was a very poor fit. I was really trying to force that mechanic to work, and it was pretty obvious in hindsight that it was never going to work. There is a number of spell effects that just can't be encompassed in a basic move, such as like healing. There's no basic move that heals, but there had to be a spell that heals. And so like, how does that translate? So now you have the spell casting mechanic that is doing like, oh, let's replace basic moves, but then also sometimes do our very own unique thing. So I ran into two issues. One was that was overly complicated, and there was really no elegant way to do spellcasting the way I was trying to do it. And also, there was the issue of like to not to put it in so many words, but action economy. You know, can somebody run forward and protect everyone and aid everyone, and can, you know, like how does that work? Basically, these what I would call reactive moves, where you do a move in response to somebody else doing a move. So the way that I went about it, I didn't fix spellcasting right away, but I did address the reactive move thing. And what I tried to do, and this is foolish of me, was I tried to invent a round structure. One of the specific things that kind of annoys me about D&D, I don't know if I've made a video on this specifically. I think I have, with initiative. Yes, I did a video on initiative. So I reinvented initiative. Why would I do this? So basically what I did was I had a mechanic where, at the start of each round, everyone would declare what they are doing, and then you can resolve those moves in any order. So if you are wanting to aid or protect somebody, you have to declare that as the thing that you are doing. You can't do other things at the same time. This was deeply problematic. So you have now the party tank who can't go up and fight. He has to fight or tank. He can't do both. You have the rogue who needs people to assist them in order to get their sneak attack damage, because the sneak attack is based on being assisted by somebody else. The issue there is that really dedicates two people to the rogue doing a thing. It's possible that I could have made this work in a balance sense. Like I could have made it reasonable, and like balance out the abilities and make it fair and make everyone contribute pretty much, pretty meaningfully. The issue is that it's not what the system's about. There's two main problems with this. One, it is treating a combat scene as fundamentally different than any other scene, because you have to stop and go into a round structure that doesn't exist anywhere else in the system. And then two, it introduces an action economy, which really slows, it tells everyone, stop, we're not doing the game anymore. We're going to go do this different game, this fight game, which is different than what we've been doing. And that's no good. I want the entire game, every scene, to work the same way, have the same flow, because the flow is good. The way it works now, and the way it honestly should have worked from the beginning, is that, and the way, what I should have kept in mind, because it did kind of work this way in the beginning, I should have kept this format in mind when I was making changes. It's, the GM presents a obstacle, a problem, an event, a threat, this, or foreshadowing something bad about to happen. And then the players respond to that. One person or, two people if they want to cooperate. There's going to be it's the GM does a move, players do a move. GM does a move, players do a move. And the GM is going to stick with soft moves for the most part. Soft moves being moves which, and I took this straight out of Monster of the Week. Soft moves are forecasting trouble, observing problems, that is, pointing out that problems are happening. It is going to be basically non-harmful things that say, there's a bad thing about to happen. What are you going to do about it? That is the nature of a soft move. hard moves occur if the players don't address the soft moves. So if I say, all right, so the Minotaur is charging at you, what do you do? And the player says, well, I'm going to go do something else. I'm not going to worry about this Minotaur. I have other things to worry about. Okay, you do your thing, and then the Minotaur is going to do a hard move because you didn't address that threat. And hard moves are the ones that do damage. They're the ones that move player characters into disadvantageous positions. Basically, the things that actually take effect and have a meaningful impact on the narrative and the mechanics. They are not forecasting. The bad thing is happening, not about to happen. It is happening. So those are hard moves. Hard moves should... I'm considering the possibility of hard moves also occurring if the players fail a roll, but for the most part, consequences of failure are baked into the failure itself. So I'm not sure if I'm going to want to do that. It's probably something I'll experiment with at some point. For right now, hard moves only occur if soft moves are not addressed. So the GM is going to do a move, either a hard move or a soft move. In either event, it then goes to the players. How do you respond to this? How do you address this threat? What are you going to do about this obstacle? And as soon as they are done with that, it goes back to the GM. What did I do about reactive moves? Well, they are no longer rolls. They're simple expenditures of resources. I took a cue from Root about this. This is the way Root does it. You take 1 fatigue, and you assist somebody to give them a +2 on their roll. Or if you are protecting someone, you take 1 fatigue, and that damage goes onto you instead. Now, presumably, you will only do the protect someone move if you have better armor than them, or have more health available. Like, you can afford to take more damage than they can. So it's certainly possible, I suppose, that you could protect someone who would have been fine and take that damage on yourself. I mean, that's something for the table to go over. But I haven't mentioned spellcasting. What's spellcasting? How's that going to work? Well, now, spellcasting, there isn't a list of spells. The way I had it was that there was a list of maybe 8 or 10 spells broken down into very broad categories. I was taking names of schools of spells from D&D. So you had abjuration, teleportation, divination, evocation, things like that, and the sort of general description of the sorts of things that those spells do. And the idea was that when you cast a spell, you choose what spell you're doing, or which spell you know or have prepared, and describe how that type of spell is allowing you to do the thing that you are trying to do. Now, there isn't a list of spells. There is just, you can cast spells. And then anyone who can cast spells, it defines what their spellcasting ability is, which is going to be, intelligence, wisdom, or charisma. If they have spells that deal damage, it also tells you what your damage type is. And the damage types that I have so far are psychic, elemental, arcane, and radiant. Necrotic also exists. Oh, yeah, actually, I think the Warlock has access to Necrotic. No, the Warlock is arcane. Necrotic exists, but it's a monster-only thing. So, you can cast spells. When you wish to cast a spell, you do so when you are making a basic move, and you spend 1 fatigue, or you take 1 fatigue, and you can use your spellcasting ability modifier, and you get a +1 to the roll. If your spellcasting, or if the move that you were doing already uses your spellcasting ability modifier, or a modifier that is the same value or higher, you get a +2 to the roll instead. Now, this would have been redundant had I kept the basic fatigue move, or the basic fatigue mechanic, which is that you can only spend 1 fatigue to get a +1 to a roll, and you can do that any number of times per roll. So you take 3 fatigue, get a +3 to the roll. If you miss by 3, you can just choose to succeed. I've removed that. and reduced the amount of fatigue that characters have. Most characters only have 5 fatigue. So you're going to be relying a lot more on your fatigue recovery mechanics, which I've also noticed we aren't really utilizing a lot. So we're going to lean a little bit harder on that. I've revamped some of those mechanics to make them happen more often. So the idea is that there is this balance. You have to spend fatigue and gain fatigue, and you probably aren't going to spend a lot of time full or empty. Because you're spending fatigue to assist, you're spending fatigue to protect, you're spending fatigue to cast spells, to use a lot of your class features. Fatigue is very important. It is the primary resource for all classes, kind of with the exception of the Barbarian. I had to add in fatigue mechanics to the Barbarian because I realized that, the Barbarian just has no use for fatigue. Neat. So the Barbarian is still less dependent on fatigue than other classes. But we'll see if we want to keep it that way. So anyways, so I have fixed the reactive moves. I have fixed spellcasting. We are going to be having another playtest session in a couple of weeks. And after that, we'll see if all of this is working out. But I think it is going to be, or I think it will. Because I'm sort of readjusting and refocusing on what is the core gameplay loop and how do these mechanics serve that loop, rather than I have an issue, let me do a mechanic that fixes that one issue without regard for how it affects the rest of the system. So important lessons learned. I have chided myself for trying to reinvent an action economy in a game that emphatically does not need or want it. And we're going to be moving forward from here, and I'm really excited about the way this is turning out. I've also kind of redone monster mechanics, and so now instead of having to do a stat block for every monster, they're going to be much more based on just their level. So monsters are going to have a level and then 1 or 2 special abilities, and that's it. And then basically everything to do with interacting with a monster is going to have to do with its level. All right, so we'll see how that works out. Bye.